The ACC has added 3 new teams, Cal, Stanford, and SMU. What does that mean for the conference? What does it mean for the Pac-2 now? Oregon State, Washington State, a lot of ramifications of this, guys. We're going to talk about that right after this word from our sponsor. This episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing, ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you.
This is for Cameron.
What is up, guys, and welcome in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. This is another episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. And guys, we just had breaking news. Pete Thamel, as I'm watching some of my morning stuff, trying to research a little bit more for the Penn State, West Virginia coming up on Saturday. I see the thing come across my screen, breaking news on ESPN from Pete Thamel. The ACC has entered into an agreement with 3 new schools. As you know, it's been going on for about a month now, back and forth. We weren't sure what was going to happen. SMU, Cal, and Stanford are going to join the ACC, signifying a big move up for SMU, obviously, but a death blow for sure to the Pac-4 if there was any chance at all that conference was going to try to survive under the Pac name. I don't think there's any chance that happens now, and maybe it was already dead before. Certainly a death blow for that conference, and 100 years of history is definitely gone. But there's an article on ESPN talking about a lot of the ins and outs of that, so let's get into that really quick. Sources: ACC votes to invite Cal, Stanford, and SMU. This is from Pete Thamel. The Atlantic Coast Conference is expanding from its eastern roots. The ACC presidents and chancellors met on Friday morning and voted all 3 new schools, Stanford, Cal, and SMU, sources told ESPN. It will bring to the league to 18 members, 17 of which play football full-time in the league. The additions will be in all sports and will begin in 24-25 school year. The moves have been the subject of much drama the last month as Commissioner Jim Phillips worked diligently to appease a group of schools eager to add the schools and others seeking more revenue. The protracted process ultimately ended with the ACC growing amid a backdrop that brought to light some of the fundamental tensions within the league. The move unfolded in an atypical process, as typical votes in the league matters are cast as unanimous and a formality when presidents meet to decide. The ACC needed 12 of 15 votes. Heading into the meeting on Friday morning, it was uncertain whether or not the league had votes, a significant variance from how conference expansion typically works. In a straw poll more than 3 weeks ago, 4 ACC schools dissented: Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and NC State. One of them needed to flip if the vote was going to pass, and all eyes entered the meeting on NC State Chancellor Randy Woodson. The focus on Woodson intensified on Thursday night when members of the University of North Carolina's Board of Trustees issued a statement to voice their objection to the additions. The moves were perceived around the ACC as a political statement to be sure that UNC Chancellor Kevin Guskiewicz didn't flip his vote. UNC and NC State did not need to be tied together, but some of the uncertainty around Woodson's vote came from the political ramifications of not being aligned with North Carolina. The ACC joins the ranks of a rapidly changing collegiate landscape, and starting next year, the Big Ten will have 18 teams, and the Big 12 and SEC will have 16 teams. The move leaves the Pac-12 with just 2 remaining programs, Washington State and Oregon State, a continued spiral that's included the leagues losing 8 teams since late July. Cal, Stanford, and SMU will come as a significant discount, which will help create a revenue pool to be shared among ACC members. SMU is expected to come in for 7 years with no broadcast media revenue, and both Cal and Stanford were expected to receive 30% shares of ACC payouts. The money being withheld is expected to create an annual pot of revenue between 55 and 60 million. Some of the revenue will be divided up proportionally among the 14 full-time members in Notre Dame, while another portion will be put in a pool designated for success initiatives that rewards programs that win. The move delivers a life preserver to the athletic departments at Stanford and Cal, which were left twisting amid the Pac-12's implosion. Stanford has an athletic department that's considered the gold standard in college athletics. Both will face significant increased travel costs, which will significantly impact a Cal athletic department that faces hundreds of millions in debt. For SMU, the decision to forego television revenue gave them a seat at the major conference, as the school will lean on its wealthy boosters to help them stay afloat until revenue comes in. It marks a significant moment for the school's climb back from the death penalty for major infractions that led the school not playing football in 1987 and 1988. SMU didn't return to a bowl until 2009 after the penalties. Even with the vote going through, the nearly month-long saga to decide on the addition illuminated the divisions in the ACC. Both Florida State and Clemson have spoken publicly about how the revenue gap between the ACC and the Big Ten and SEC needs to close. While those schools had not been supportive of additions heading into the final meeting, the decision does give them access to millions more in annual revenue if they succeed on the field. With the ACC contract running through 2036, the past few weeks have highlighted the uncertainty that will linger in the upcoming years. Florida State officials have been particularly vocal about leaving the league, with President Richard McCullough saying the Seminoles will be very seriously consider leaving the league if the revenue distribution model didn't change significantly. This move by the ACC does not appear to change that tenor. For other schools in the ACC, the three new schools represent both the addition of quality academic institutions and safety in numbers. Cal and Stanford were the last major conference schools that offered significant value left on the board. Before we go any further, guys, I'd ask that you like the video. The content, like I say, it feeds the monster, it feeds the algorithm, pushes this video out to a wider audience. Don't forget to subscribe to Mountaineer Paul Talks Football, guys. We talk about, obviously, college football, college sports on a national scale. We try to focus on the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12 slant. But as you can see, we're talking about conference realignment today. And last but not least, drop a comment below, guys. Let me know how you feel about this entire situation and how it played out. Is this just a Band-Aid over a bullet hole? And long-term consequences are still going to be what they are for the ACC, regardless of who comes into the conference now. Let me know what you think about that. So, guys, I don't do a ton of conference realignment videos, but even I can see that this is probably the ACC putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. The teams that are going to leave are still going to leave in whenever the ACC contract runs out in 2036. I don't see that changing. For SMU, this is a step up, especially from the death penalty they received in 88 or 89 or whenever that was. Interestingly enough, I don't know if a lot of you guys know, Skip Bayless was the guy that pulled the trigger on that. He was the insider that kind of was the reason the SMU was the reason they kind of died. I felt that was interesting. He was the guy that broke that story back then. That's a little off topic, though. For Cal, I don't understand. I'm sure that's probably been said a million times, guys. Like I said, I don't do a lot of realignment videos, but even I can see that their debt issues are certainly not going to be solved by 30% revenue. And I don't know if they had wealthy donors like SMU that keep them afloat. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments, does Cal survive this as an athletic department? I'm not sure. Are they going to have to cut off some of their other sports? I'd really be interested to know how you guys feel about that. But at the end of the day, you have to have a seat at a big table, even if it's only for 10 years. Then you figure out what's going to happen later on down the line. That's just the way it is. This is a really long-winded way to say we're kicking the can down the road. We'll deal with the other problems when they come. There's not a whole lot anybody can do about the ACC contract that I can see. From what I understand, these teams coming in doesn't mean that other teams can back out now. Maybe it shuts Florida State up for now, Clemson, teams like that. But at the end of the day, I think they're gone anyway, right? I mean, that's the consensus, isn't it? And you look at what this has created, it looks like there are tensions now between UNC and NC State, who have been politically aligned in the past. interesting to see how they kind of butted heads in this scenario. I wasn't expecting that. I'm honestly, I was go back 2 weeks. I didn't think this thing was going to happen. I really didn't think it was going to, but obviously the tenor changed over the last 2 weeks. At the end of the day, the ACC has strengthened a little bit as a result of this. I think SMU, they view this as certainly a chance to be the only Texas fish in the ACC pond, at least for now. And that gives them quite a recruiting advantage, I would say. You can tell these kids in Texas, hey, you get to play against the Miamis, the Florida States, and the Clemsons of the world, the North Carolinas in basketball, the Dukes in basketball. And I think, SMU stands to benefit quite a bit out of this situation, even if it's only for 10 years. All they have to figure out is how to enhance their brand just a little bit. If they get it to any kind of stage at all, to like, let's say where TCU is, something like that, to where your brand value has grown to Power 5 status and level, they may put themselves in the driver's seat to get an SEC invite, which I doubt Texas would allow, or potentially another, maybe if the ACC ends up blowing up anyway, a Big 12 invite. There's so many ways for SMU to benefit from this situation. I don't see. I understand the money being an issue in the immediate future, but it sounds like they have boosters that are going to take care of that. So this is a gamble on themselves. They're betting on themselves. And I think definitely SMU stands to gain the most here. Stanford probably will continue to be dominant. All the other sports, like they always have been, and probably will continue to be. I don't see much change there. And Cal, I don't really know. I mean, I feel like the ACC obviously was in a better spot than the Pac for sure. But even before, I don't know if they're going to compete. Can they pull like what I said with SMU and say, hey, it's going to be between them and Stanford battling for California recruits to say we're going to play in the ACC? Let me tell you from West Virginia University point of view, at least the fans' point of view, what it's like. The travel does suck. The kids do get tired, especially in the sports that travel more than others. But in football, it matters. Trust me. Pat Narduzzi said it the other day. He thinks that the kids are going to get tired. The cost that it costs to travel is insane. And and you look at Cal and Stanford, especially, and SMU. In a lot of cases, their travel costs are going to be way more than what West Virginia's have been. And I can tell you right now, guys, West Virginia finishes usually in top 3 in revenue in the Big 12. But what's left over, we're nowhere near that usually because of what we spend on travel and other things. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. And I think these universities weighed out the pros and the cons and decided, hey, at the end of the day, being a part of a big table is more important than all the other cons. And I get that. You have to make yourself relevant, and you have to stay relevant no matter what, or you end up being what SMU was in 1987 and 88. You end up dying anyways. So I wish all these teams the best of luck going forward. It'll be interesting to see these teams playing in the ACC. I mean, for Notre Dame, I think that'll be interesting. At least they can align their schedules and continue to do that. Maybe it convinces Notre Dame to enter the conference full time. I'm not exactly sure on that, or maybe you guys in the comments can tell me how Notre Dame feels about that. But generally speaking, guys, I think this is something that had to be done. I thought it was interesting that the NC State people were pressured into doing it, basically. And I'm wondering what the ramifications are with North Carolina going forward and all that. But I don't have much else to say on that, guys. Hope you like this episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. A lot of this was just off the cuff for me. I don't do a whole lot of conference realignment, so I hope you enjoyed it. This has been another edition of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football, guys. This episode is over. I know.
This is for Cameron. Tim.